Welcome everybody. We have Pat, what's my rate McMasters, and one half of the dynamic duo, Jackie. How are you?
I'm good,
How you
guys. How are
doing, Rick,
you?
Jackie, everybody out there in real estate land,
Ru-
millions of
Ruby's
fans?
evidently working or something, and then
Yeah.
Jessica, she's all tied up, and so, but she did give me some information to share. She might pop in, but I kind of doubt it. So we'll see what today brings us. But I thought, it just YouTube is the land of negativity, and
Really?
it just is. I mean, I thought, well, I would just ask the question and going through some of the numbers. Is there any good news out there? Now, when you say good news, I mean, there's good news for buyers and then there's different good news for sellers. So I thought we'd just jump through and look at some of the numbers and say, well, as we're looking towards summer, is there anything to look forward to, or is it just going to be more of the same or more bleakness? And we can all go away all doomy and gloomy. And but you, Pat, you just had an article that you found about um, delistings.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, for some reason, it's spinning, but basically, the article says housing market sees record wave of delistings as buyers step back. So,
Yeah, that tees us up just perfectly where I was headed. Because here's what I think, and I'm going to show you what I know. Because there's a big difference between thinking and knowing. And so, Jackie, this is our active listings. Now, I predicted 26,000, right, by the end of March, and I think we're going to come in slightly just shy of that, right about there.
Show off.
Well, it's the first time ever I'm right.
No, I
I'm
mean, you
making
are
my
so incredibly close. It's crazy.
I know, but it didn't take much. I mean, when you see it going up 800 a week, and then I track the 7-day moving average, it's okay. So, no, so in other words, this week, if you look at the ticker down below, the number of new listings is slowing down a little bit, but the number of new contracts actually went up. So you can see that new listings down below there say 3424, new contracts 3339. That's 300 higher than where we've been hovering, but it closed the gap. And so what I think is getting back to what Pat just showed. I think this year people listed their homes in January and said listed for 90 days. Let's see what happens. And I think April 1st, we're going to see a huge pop of about 2,500 expired listings. That's going to make our active listing count come down about here, down about there. And I think it's going to stay there and start to dip during the summer. Because I don't really see active contracts getting any lower than what they have been unless they go back down to 2,200 again, which could happen. But that's my
I
guess
can't even
point.
imagine that.
Yeah, when you look at our months of supply has even improved, from
yep.
a high of 5 down to 3.7. And again, that's all tied to supply and demand, right? And
Well, Rick, I
how do I
think
look with those big blue lines in front of my face there?
everything looks so techno right now. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And
I
I go
think
and
the
move
other thing
everything.
I think the other thing we're going to see too, though, is the luxury homes are going to drop off, and that's been really carrying the market along. So, contracts and listings, because the luxury market always dies off in the summer here.
Yep, yep. Well, I think I'm trying to get this doggone for everybody. I'm using a different software today. There we go. And so my other one was going, brrrt, brrrt, and I thought, well, that's not going to work. This is the Cromford Market Index demand. Okay. In other words, see how low that's gone here? It's got an index of 84, and way back in the doldrum years, it was 27. Um, Somebody made a comment on a channel the other day, said, I bet we break 70. I don't think so. So I don't see this. How much lower is this going to get?
Yeah.
Going into summer. Now next year, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know how old I'm going to be next year. But that's the overall market. When I look at the Cromford Market Index, if I click on this and it's not letting me play, Here's demand. Okay, this is the overall market. So the overall market index is down. Our demand is starting to creep up. Our supply
Your chart's being hidden by is your chart? There you go.
creeped up even faster. Let me go back to demand again. It's going up, but it was not catching up with supply until the past week. Looks to me like it's gonna catch up. And I'm basing that on people just pulling their homes out the market. Now that will help sellers going into summer, but what's also helping buyers right now is look at the number of price cuts. That graph off to the right here jumped in 1 week from 3,349 to 3,654. So sellers, both their asking price and their contributions have gone favorable for buyers. They're kind of getting the message there, right?
I think they are. It seems some of the people I've been working with, obviously some price reductions, but it's been what would you say? How much of the price reduction percentage wise?
It doesn't give me that on here. It just says a price cut number
Yeah.
of 3,000. So it really never. I look in a Cromford. It doesn't really tell me the average price cut, but I've seen some pretty substantial ones out there. Case Schiller, I've got that here to show for just a moment, and let me make sure I'm not hiding any chats here. So nope. Case Schiller lags by a couple months, sometimes 3 months, but this is the index, kind of like the Cromford Market Index, but it's jumped. It's trending positive. And they are saying in this article that I read that they expect it to be this way at least another couple of months from today. So getting into June, they're not expecting a lot of sentiment to be negative towards real estate. And then back that up with a University of Michigan consumer sentiment. It's climbing. And then we had durable goods orders up 0.9%. So some of the doom and gloomy stuff is not quite showing up. But now it all hinges on rates and affordability. So we're starting to see some improvement on affordability, but not enough to pull waves of people off the sidelines. And it's not being helped. Pat, you're just not pushing the right buttons on your end to get rates down.
No, I know. I mean, it's been pretty much an uneventful event since last week. The Feds came out with their meeting, and it was really pretty much same old, same old. The PCE numbers come out tomorrow. We had some preliminary PCE numbers come out today, but it's just been 1 week to another, just looking at different numbers. And if you look at this, I was showing you this before, but you look at this. This is the 1 year, chart on a 10-year Treasury. I mean, it's basically this channel. I mean, has been stuck from, this level up here to down here. So we've been stuck. If you start here, we're pretty much at the same level we were a year ago in terms of the 10-year Treasury. So nothing's really changed from a rate standpoint. What's going to happen? My prediction, or I don't know, based on what we're seeing, I think we're going to see. Once again, we've been saying this. I mean, I think we're going to see more of the same. Rates are still sitting around, high sixes. I mean, we're sitting right now at about, 6 3/4, 6 5/8 range. It hasn't really moved, so there's not going to be much there. I mean, if we see rates float in the low sixes, you're going to see demand picks up anytime we see a lower, bump lower in rates. It's nothing dramatic, but from the Feds last week, they said the dot plot that they came out with said that we'll see a couple of rate cuts this year, 2 next year, and then by 27 they said another 2. So what the Feds do and what the market does, I think, like I said, I've been pretty zoomed in on the 10-year Treasury, how it's been acting versus what the Fed's been doing, because what the Fed does, it seems like the market reacts opposite every time.
Yeah. And Jackie, are you seeing a lot of price reductions in the market?
So I am, and in fact, on our own listings, just tweaking it even just a little bit. So I had a listing, I listed at 78th and Lower Buckeye, and that area is doing okay. It's kind of close to Tolleson and Avondale. As soon as I reduced that, we listed 5,000 high. I told them, let's give it a week or two, and then we got to be realistic. As soon as I dropped at 5, I got an offer the next day. And then the same thing, we had a condo in downtown Phoenix. As soon as we did a price reduction on that, we got an offer right away.
Yeah.
The one I got on 78th Drive, I was actually surprised. They did ask for concessions, but it was a full price offer. And so that was good.
Well,
But
that's we're seeing an average of $10,000 in concessions, which is kind of the limit anyway, right? When you're financing. So
Why were you surprised about getting the concessions?
no, I wasn't surprised about the concessions. I was expecting it. I was surprised they came in full price because, if you listen to
that's
everybody out
unheard
there,
of to me.
the buyer chatter is, submit lowball offers, but lowball offers aren't getting accepted. So,
Well, we've got a couple questions here on apartments' effect on the listings. I don't think the apartments affect the listings. The apartments will affect apartment rent when it comes to vacancy rates because, you either want to rent or you want to buy. And the fact that they build more apartments out there doesn't mean that as a seller that you're not going to list your home because there's more apartments. They either fill them up with renters or they don't. And if they can't, you're going to see things like, first month free, free cable.
Yep.
And then you'll start seeing the price reduction. So it doesn't take much driving around out here to see the oversaturation coming. And so I don't see apartments affecting people's willingness to list. What I see is that there was this wave of optimism coming up in January, like there is every year. And everybody said, all right, let's go for it. And a lot of people just didn't get the memo that the market was not as brisk and it was slow. And I hear that all the time. And so they priced high and then they didn't start adjusting until March, where normally you start seeing price adjustments in February. And so the other question, it says at no one, where do you see prices are coming down? I'm seeing it in the asking price. In the closed prices, keep in mind that's going to lag 30 days. But what I've finally seen is the asking price per square foot is finally now getting closer to the sales price per square foot, where before it was this huge gap. I want this. Well, you're going to get this.
Yeah.
So, and it's now, Jackie, when you take a listing, because I always find that when I take a listing that, that you have that conversation. Now, if we're not seeing any activity, we're going to have to take a look at a price reduction and what type of reduction do you think we should be looking at? We have that conversation, but then I find when the time comes, they totally forget that original conversation.
I don't seem to have that problem because I'm very adamant about it when we talk about it. We might do a CMA 2 or 3 weeks prior to listing, and then I always tell people we're going to update the comps. With the way the market is, we're going to update the comps the day before we go active, and we might have to make an adjustment. And then I give them the suggested list price, and I usually will tell people price right at market, right where we think we're going to get an offer. Let's not push it at all. And if they insist on pushing it, then I let them know we can do that. But the worst thing you want to have happen is your listing age. If your listing ages, you're going to end up with less than if you had priced it appropriately in the first place. And so when you have that conversation, you really explain it in detail to people. I think they understand. Everybody's goal is to get the house sold. We want the seller to get the most possible, but we have to be realistic, and it's very micro market right now. So,
boy, it is. It's different neighborhood by neighborhood. And here's the average list price per square foot. Notice everybody got really optimistic. And now that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. So they're coming down. But if you pull off under $1 million, you see more of an adjustment. I'm going to roll these off here. Down to 288 from a peak of 290. I left in the 2 million there. There we go. So down to 270 there. They reached the peak of 271. It looks more like that on the chart, but you can see where the general direction is. Last year, we were sitting at 274. If I go to all, last year we were sitting at 391 a square foot, and now we're at 364. So prices are coming down. I'll tell you where they're getting hammered though is condos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Condos on if I look up sales on condos, and I'll try to do that while we're on here. Oh boy, are they getting beat up. And so Doomer TV says, sorry, all rentals in the greater Phoenix area are not all of Arizona. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Saying 17,000 around. So I think you're referencing all rentals in Arizona dramatically increased. I would say though that the percentage of increase in rentals is the same in our market as it is statewide. Would you guys agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you don't, you can tell me.
Oh, we would.
Yeah, I'm going to look at sales annual average, no, monthly average, all areas, all types, weekly chart here. And let's see what that gets us. This is the fun part about being live. Sometimes it goes absolutely nowhere, but it's cooking. The hamster's running in the background there. Here it goes. Here it goes. Now, there's the monthly average sales price. And I'm going to get, darn it, this isn't the one I would look at. But this is not going down. That's not really the chart that I wanted. So I'll do some more digging there. I'm trying to find the one that shows you the big decline in condos. Now, condos may be more affected by an increase in apartments being built.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think we're finally we're finally starting to see some pressure out in the West Valley when it comes to water and water resources. I don't know what to think of that. You're supposed to prove a 100-year supply, and now they're pushing back and saying, well, we don't want you to pull it out of the aquifers anymore, so we're gonna. I know we already gave you the permit, but we're gonna pull the permit back. That's scary stuff. So,
And that's going to do nothing but push the values up, though, in the West Valley.
well, it will because you're not going to have any. You're not going to have any inventory. Hi from Northern California.
Northern
Come on
California.
down. So I'm pulling here. You know what? I can't find the one that's letting me actually filter in condos. Trust me, when I look at our list, our average sales prices right now are up, and then when you go to condos, it's down. And I think that's for a lot of different reasons. Like their HOA payments are going up.
Yeah. HOA
The
insurance.
assessments.
A lot of times,
The assessments. People
Huh?
are really worried about the assessments, and I've heard some horror stories lately.
Yeah, I think the condo rules that obviously were implemented in Miami. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're kind of nationwide. So I mean, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are certainly looking at condos a lot differently than they were. They've always been kind of a weird natured animal to finance, and you really got to do your homework before you kind of get rolling on a condo.
Is it getting
Because
easier
like I
getting
said,
the
I've seen
condo
so
certs,
many.
Pat? Is it getting easier
Hmm?
getting the condo certs? 'Cause that was
Wow. It never is really with HOAs. It just depends if you're working with HOA that's actually, available. I mean, the problem is, like you said, you start on a contract, you wait 2 or 3 weeks, you got maybe a 4-week closing. By about this 2.5 to 3 weeks in it, you finally get the condo certs. The problem is a lot of these HOAs, they don't fill in the questionnaire correctly. They leave something blank, and then that drives on, that will drive the underwriter. It's like, no, it's not complete. So that's the problem. I mean, it could be hell on
well, and
wheels.
then you get it at the last minute.
Yeah. I've seen more, last minute deals go astray with condos than any other type of transactions, I would say.
Yeah, it's
Not to scare anybody, but just it's just a
Well, I
different
guess the
animal.
message is if you're going to buy a condo, set your closing out more than 30 days, like 40, 45, because it's very rare now that they're closing in 30. And unless it's
Yeah.
cash, then nobody cares, you know. So,
Yep. Well, a lot of times when it's cash too, it's a not, a lot of these condos will be, if you see cash or, they're non-warrantable, they've got something, there's so many things that could, how many investors are involved, the assessments, their reserves, they have 10% reserves, lawsuits. There's so many factors you can go in and knock in this out of the, warrantable. Warrantable meaning basically it's covered by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, guidelines. When it's non-warrantable, it's basically outside that circle. So that's the problem. Then you get in non-warrant. So if you see a listing that says cash for a condo, that is automatic red flag for me to say that's probably non-warrantable.
well, the other thing to worry about some of the condos too, if you go in one and it's got like 70% of the condos are run by a management company and they're renting them out, don't touch it. Don't touch it, because there's an Arizona state law that if 70 to 75% of the homeowners decide to sell the entire complex, they can. And you're just out of luck.
Yeah.
What do you mean I got to sell? Yeah, we're converting it. And some people got burned with it. Jackie, earlier I was talking about the optimism that sellers had in January. Here we come. Remember the chatter in like November and December? This is going to be a good year. It's going to be a good first quarter and everything. And that optimism, spilled its way out into listings and stuff. But in the back end, buyers were exactly the opposite. It's worse than everybody thinks. There's no way I'm offering a full price offer. And the offers that get written it just makes you fall out of your chair sometimes. Like it's, I know the market's slow, but we haven't reached desperation yet. Will we? I don't know, and I'm not going to predict, but I think you can't get that kind of an offer accepted, especially the first week.
Mm-mm.
They're asking 500. I'm going to offer 410. No, they just listed it.
And that's normally when you see the low ball offers, which is so crazy.
The first week.
Go look for the ones that have been on the market for 150 days and make low ball offers on those, because they might take it.
Yeah,
they're still on the market that long.
You're never going to get your price, your low price the first week.
Mm-mm.
Now, there's, of course, the definition of a low ball offer varies because, you've got maybe they priced it way too high to begin with, and you just came in with a real number. But, again, that goes to that optimism. And I was seeing so much optimism. There was the 4 to 6 rate cuts this year, right, Pat? And everybody was, here we go. This is going to be great. I was just looking at the numbers and going, we need a catalyst. Yeah. In order for that 3,000 listings, 3,000 number on contracts each week, that has to go up. What's going to make that go up? Rates? Yeah. Lower asking prices? Yeah. Combination of both. Affordability, increase in wages. So I didn't see any of that coming to fruition in 3 months. January, February, March.
No.
Rick says, wake me up when desperation sets in. I don't know. The amount of people waiting is staggering. So, first you have, what is it? The asking price starts to come down. Then
first you start to see more concessions, I think, but
then you start seeing more concessions or vice versa. We're several months out before people start to really aggressively lower their prices and quote unquote panic. But there are so many people out there just testing the market, saying, I'm going to list it. Doesn't work. No big deal. I'm out. I like where I'm staying. It'd be nice to get something bigger or something smaller, and why fight it? And so I see that more and more. Now you're over 55 areas. They pull them off the market because they're leaving town. They're going back to Michigan, going back to Canada, going back to Wisconsin. And so I'm trying to pull up my little handy dandy chart here. I'm having technical challenges here.
You're having it all the time.
I got a question for you, Rick. So I've got a scenario where I'm listing a home for a gentleman here. We're going to be coming soon this next week, and then active obviously within 30 days. There's been sales in there 375 to a little over 4, okay, over the last year. Open Door, I believe it's Open Door. They've got one sitting in there. It's like 40,000 less than anything else in there, and it just sits and it doesn't sell. And so I'm not seeing a lot of Open Doors anymore, but that thing's been sitting there for 150 days, and it's panicking my poor seller, because he's like, is that going to affect the value? And I'm like, I think appraisers understand Open Doors scenario. I don't think it's going to have quite the effect that it would have had a couple of years ago.
Well, it's interesting. Jessica and I were having that same conversation today of an Open Door house that she saw that's been on the market like 200 days, and they haven't adjusted the price. She says, I think they're just okay holding on to their inventory so they can say, well, this is how many assets we own right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've never understood their business model, and I don't, now, so your seller's like, man, is this going to really affect us? Is it you think it's in better condition than what you're selling?
Oh God, no, it's the normal Open Door, throw some lipstick on it and put it back on the market. Their photos will always look a little bit better than even what it looks like when you get there, because you can see when you get there how cheaply everything is done. I mean, they're just known for that. And so I explained that to him and said, the reason is probably because it seems like such a phenomenal deal at the price that it's at, because it's so much lower than everything else in there has been. But I don't see that it's pulled the price down either, because the other sales have still happened at the higher prices. But it's surprising that nobody's made an offer on it. And the only thing I could think of is agents pretty much know you're getting what you get with Open Door, and it's just lipstick.
Yeah. I've seen some horror stories out there, not just Open Door, but some of the iBuyers where they paint and the guy that was painting the house was 5'2", and his pole was only 5'6", so he didn't paint the rest of, he went up. I went in the house. I go, do you think maybe they could finish the final 2 feet here?
And I think the biggest thing.
Hey, Jackie, let me ask you a question. For the people, just in general, I mean, it's just asking you. You're one agent out of number of agents, but are you hearing or seeing anybody or groups of people that are looking at buying, just like, hey, I'm going to wait till things settle down in terms of. I think it seems to me there was a lot of angst behind the scenes with buyers as far as this administration. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going. There's a lot of balls up in the air right now with tariffs, inflation, egg prices coming down, gas. Inflation's still there, but I mean, you got tariffs. Are you hearing or seeing from your your group of people angst about, like, I don't know what's going to go on, as far as it just seems like there's a lot of confusion.
I think just in the mere fact, but I think any transition period, there's always fear. And so we had fear there with the last administration. So there was going to be fear in a transition no matter what. And I think there's a lot of buyers, they re-signed leases and they're there. And I still feel like we have a lot of pent up demand that, buyers keep saying, well, okay, so if this administration supposedly is going to drive rates down, then I'm waiting for the rates to drive down. But it's not going to be driven down like people think it's going to be driven down. There's nothing to happen that's going to happen to do that unless we hit some major disaster or recession. And then that's not going to be a good thing.
Well, I think, in a reset, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm just kind of glad, thanks for the input, because like I said, I'm just, you read a lot of different articles, you see people commentaries on, when I'm working, I've got different business channels on and listen to different commentary. And it just seems like they're, behind the scenes, there is probably demand out there. We're still dealing with an affordability issue. I feel bad for first time home buyer that's, got to look at a payment. I mean, you quote a payment and you're looking at price. I mean, 3,500, 3,300, I mean, it's, if rates got down to the low sixes, you're talking about a couple $100 a month, savings there. I just, I think it's gonna be more, just giving my opinion, but I'm glad you said that, because I think there's never going to be a time when, we're going to, like Rick and you and I always talk about, nobody's going to ring a bell when everything's going to be all warm and fuzzy to buy a house or sell a house.
Remember Jessica gave us like
Yeah.
6 homes that she was going to track back in February?
Yeah. Well, she totally failed. Yeah, we haven't heard about
Yeah.
them. Oh, you got them?
So these are the 6 homes,
Oh,
right?
okay. I was going to say she failed her homework assignment.
No, she actually came to the teacher and said, "Hey, I finished the project." Okay, so
Hey,
she,
Rick, can I say one last thing to this conversation before you go into that? I feel really bad for the natives and I was born here. I grew up here. And I remember when I first started real estate, the average sales price was $80,000. And it's like, there's so many people, and that's what I hear the most out of frustrated people is that they're from here and there's so much money that came here, especially during COVID, and drove the prices up. And I feel really bad for those people that have spent their whole life here and now they're kind of being forced out. It's really
but you can repeat that story in just about every city in the country.
That's true. That's very true.
I mean, the small town that I grew up in, you talk about complaining. What we're not feeling here, that they're feeling in places like Washington State, is what's happening to their property taxes.
Oh.
And then up there now, they're proposing raising the property. I mean, they're driving some of my friends out. I got a friend who's got a beautiful house on 8 acres with views of the Olympic Mountains and a big shop and a barn. It's completely paid off. And he goes, "You would not believe my taxes. I thought I was going to live here and have a small tax bill." And he said, every year, boom, boom, boom. "Sir, may I have another?" It's rough.
Yeah. That's what pisses me off. Excuse my French. I mean, the taxes and insurance are going, they're beating everybody up.
That's a whole nother video there. Okay, let me get back to this list. No, I agree with you, Jackie, but I think it's not unique to here.
You're right. You're right.
Of the 6 that she had up there, 3 of them are still active. These were listed in February. One was listed and canceled, but relisted lower. She said it's an ugly duckling at $450,000 in the over 55 community, and those are the over 55 communities. The listings really spiked up this month. I say really spiked up, but they're still in the what I consider normal range. So they don't have an excess of listings in the over 55, but they'll start to tamp down as you get warmer and warmer and everybody goes home. Of the 3 others, 1 canceled, 1 closed, and 1's under contract. She goes, there hasn't been a lot of movement on price reduction with the active ones still sitting. The one that was taken off the market and relisted did a pretty significant price reduction. So she showed them at $765. When they canceled, they came back on at $725. And you never know. I mean, canceled listings, I've seen an increase in that in the past 2 weeks. That's what makes me so confident that expired listings are going to explode on when's the 1st? Monday or Tuesday. I canceled listings now, like, all right, I give it a shot, I get out. But then, hey, there's Ruby.
Ruby.
She's not on, but she's LOLing us. So that's what, I mean, what do you think, Jackie? I mean, we got canceled listings went up the past 2 weeks. Do you think that's a precursor to more expireds?
I do. I think the expireds actually are going to be through the 15th of April because a lot of people wait for that first week or so to be over with in January because they're, taking down Christmas lights and doing all that stuff to get the house ready for the market. So I think through the 15th, we are going to see a tremendous amount of expired listings. I know we have quite a few new listings coming, so it'll be interesting to see where we're at.
Yeah. Well, I know that, a lot of people here like to get their homes sold. School starts 2nd, 3rd week in July, for crying out loud here. And people like to move before that, in areas where there's a lot of kids. But running at altitude's asking you, Pat, are you seeing an uptick in HELOCs?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen uptick in people requesting them or, thinking about it. I mean, any type of HELOCs I get, I typically, look at credit unions. I'll send it to a couple credit union contacts I have. A lot of these credit unions honestly can do a little bit better job than on $25,000 to $50,000 range. If it's larger, it makes sense. We've got some options there. So we have a little bit. I mean, but I think people are using HELOCs, a lot smarter way than they were 10, 15 years ago, because they were going and buying boats and stuff like that. People are doing it much more smarter way, home improvement, or, they're doing debt. There's a lot of debt consolidation. I mean, the HELOCs are going to be a much, much better. If you're at 3%, there's no reason why you should do. I mean, there's some mortgage brokers out there who try to, do a cash out refinance or redo your first, but yes, typically that's, I think that's, for lack of a better term, criminal. If you take somebody out of 3% to pay off some debt, get a HELOC, 50, a lot of people have equity, you get, the prime rates come down, that fluctuates with the HELOC. So, they're sitting around the average rate. A lot of these credit unions have starting teaser rates for 6 months, but then they bump up to 8.5%, 9%.
Well, Mark here's saying an agent on the team has his third expired listing client on the market. See, that's 3 homes where you paid for the photography, you drove out there, and you didn't make a dime. And that's tough.
What about? Yeah, it's tough. What do you? This one comment about forget interest rates, house prices need to go down. Yeah, it's certainly. It would be nice if we saw lower rates and lower home prices. The combination.
Well, they need. Well, there's a difference. They need to come down, but they might not. People are, Phoenix is too expensive. Have you been to San Francisco? I'm not arguing that Phoenix is too expensive. It is. It's expensive. I'm also saying I couldn't afford to move back to Seattle now if I wanted to, but people do.
Yeah.
And so there's a segment that's been squeezed out of this market, and it may continue way longer than any of us want it to. High prices don't necessarily mean that they will snap and adjust. Now, people are looking at California and they're looking at Florida, and California prices have actually still gone up. Florida and Texas are getting buried. Texas, primarily driven by Austin because they overbuilt. The Dallas area is overbuilding. And maybe they're not overbuilding if it's lowering prices. Maybe that's the catalyst that we need. Florida is a whole host of problems, mostly insurance.
So it's gonna be interesting to see if these like I said, it just seems to me like there's a lot of, there's always unknowns, but it certainly seems like this administration's thrown in a few more
things are happening a lot quicker than we're used to. That's for sure, and it definitely gets the news started.
Oh,
I did a video on Canadians, listing like crazy and getting out, and I just got the living crap kicked out of it.
You got kicked around like a can of
they
beer
didn't like it
alongside the road.
I wasn't tying it to the currency. The currency's 69 cents on the dollar. I was just pointing out that said, well, if you have to sell, you're in a pretty good position being where the currency's lying now, because in 2007, the loonie was worth $1.07 versus US. So you bought very well then, and in 2010 there was parity in the dollar, and now it's 69 cents. So if you do have to sell, it's there. And I said, and Canadians are just a little bit ticked off at the political environment. They wanted me to use more harsh words, and the firestorm of Americans versus Canadians was quite embarrassing in that video. And it's like, but I've got one coming out Sunday night where I'm talking about, people have asked the question, well, with all these Canadians selling, is it going to affect our sales prices in Arizona, and is our inventory going to spike? Now, teaser, spoiler alert, no. And Sunday night, I go into details to why I say that. So there may be a lot of chatter. Canadians are mad. I get it. I understand it. They don't understand my sarcasm. And so, but, it's not going to change the market. It's just not.
The administration has come out with a couple of different things. I'm seeing a couple of changes on my end this week. I mean, it was announced that, Pulte, the new HUD director basically pulled back from terms of FHA financing. Non-permanent residents can no longer get
Is that
financed.
starting May, right? Or
So
April?
May I don't know the start date. I have to look at the date. But they also pulled back this one. Remember that Home Ready First grant program that I had? That was about $7,500 free money. They basically stopped that as of it's going to be as of Provident, the lender that I was using. I mean, remember Jackie, one client that we had, I gave Mauricio I've got an $11,500 credit. I mean, free money. It was basically a gimme layup loan program, free money. They reduced it from 11.5 down to 7,500, but just the other day they took it away. So yeah, so it was a great program because basically it gave they're doing some. It seems like the administration is tweaking some stuff, taking away some stuff that's hasn't really been on the radar. Like you said, that the FHA non-permanent resident. I looked it up. It certainly is going to affect.
It's having an effect on one of my listings right now. So I got a contract on one of my listings, and they were like, "Oh, we can close in 3 weeks. It's a slam dunk." The pre-qual looked good. The lender was super confident. And then yesterday I reached out and I was like, "Well, where are we?" And he goes, "Well, they're working on the $50,000 reserve that the underwriter called for." And I was like, "The what?" And he goes, "The $50,000 reserve. This is a $420,000 house, guys. $424,000. I'm like, $50,000 reserve. There's got to be a major issue. And who the heck is going to come up with a $50,000 reserve? And the underwriter's not an idiot. They're going to think, oh, you put it there, and then you're taking it right. You're going to give it right back the next day. You're going to have to track that. Who's going to give you a $50,000 gift?" So I was like blowing my lid thinking this whole thing was falling apart and they had misled me, right? The agent calls me. He goes, no, don't worry. He goes, they got money in the other countries. It's not a problem. We get the money. We'll have it by Monday, and then you'll know everything's okay. It's no problem because the FHA is going away and they will do whatever they have to get this house. I'm like, okay.
Wow. Yeah, things they are changing. I saw an interview with Doge today. I haven't watched the whole thing, and it's very interesting talking about fraud and abuse and stuff. I mean, have you heard of that cave where the federal government pensioners, where they manage if you're going to retire the pension? It's in a cave in Philadelphia. It was built in the 1950s. And they said, "How did you find out about this cave? Because everything's all done on paper." They said, "Well, we asked how many people, if we wanted to furlough federal employees, how long that, the process is." They said, "Well, we can only process 8,000 a month." And he goes, "Why?" And they go, "Well, because it's in the cave." What's the cave? And the cave is where all the paperwork's stored. And the process is so complicated that federal retirees have to take a class on how to retire. And so the guy that's in charge of fixing that is one of the co-founders of Airbnb.
Oh, I did hear that.
And they asked him how long it'll take him to fix it. There's no computers. It's all handwritten. And he said 60 days.
Wow.
And the computer systems that the government have are so archaic that a lot of things are just falling through the cracks. And one quick thing on Social Security. I just said, because I just saw this about an hour ago. It was very interesting, saying, do you know that 44% of the phone calls that are received by Social Security are people wanting to change their automatic deposit to another account? That's 44% of the phone calls, of which 80% of that is fraud.
Really?
Wow.
So they want to make that a streamlined, easier online process. And it says there's so much fraud out there. It's just unbelievable. And I'm Doge, I know it's about as political as a comment I made on Canada the other day. And I didn't. I grew up.
Yeah, don't kick the Hornets. Don't kick the hornet's nest like you did last
I
couple
grew
days
up
ago.
right across the water from Canada, for crying out loud. I have nothing against Canadians, but you can't win in that conversation because now
They're
they're
good
going, "Oh, you're siding with Canada." No, I'm sitting there in the middle going, "Gee, I wish you guys would get along." I didn't do anything, but it was interesting
Yeah.
to watch. So you can't win sometimes. Well,
Don't become our next Elon Musk here.
yeah, somebody's going to light my Dodge truck on fire. So.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. So,
Yep.
and don't do that because I just got new tires. Damn it. Well, guys, it's good to see you all. Jackie, welcome back. And you're all healed up, right? So,
I'm doing the best I can.
not throwing any baseballs with that arm, I'm sure.
I don't know that. I think those days are over.
Yeah.
But I have an arm, so that's okay.
That's the way it is with me and skiing. It's like, okay, I'll watch on TV, but that's not happening. So, well, look, you guys, you have a super weekend. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And I'm glad we didn't have too many
We
technical
will keep
glitches.
you. We will come back. What, every 2 weeks? We're doing this basically. Since we're
If I feel like it, I call you.
yep. Okay.
Like
We'll see more whole
I
hum
get an
news.
email that says,
Yeah.
"Here's the link for 5:00." I'm like, "So you're inviting me to the show?" And he's like, "No, I just sent it for shits and giggles." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Sorry, I asked."
I almost replied back and said, "Oops."
No.
Yep. It's kind of like the
Yeah.
security chat.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
We didn't mean to send it. We didn't mean to send it to
See you
you.
later.
I just showed up and you couldn't kick.
See you later.